Alright, it is Tuesday, May 29th, 2018. We're here for a policy committee meeting at the barn, 1:32 in the afternoon. Due to Memorial Day, the policy committee is on a Tuesday instead of a Monday this month. Welcome everyone here. Are there any announcements or communications?
There are none.
I think we did receive the SGA feedback letter this, our last policy committee meeting, we had a special meeting on May 3rd at the high school in the forum room where we invited members of the Student Government Association to come in. And based on that, we did receive a email, I believe, from Ben, who has been our Government Association rep on the school board for the last year. Although the camera doesn't show it, we do have a few members of SGA here with us today. So if we can, and I believe the email that Ben sent did have a couple of reminders in what they were hoping to accomplish in some of the regulations and policies that we discussed at the May 3rd meeting. So what we're going to do today is we'll go right into those. First, we do have minutes from the April 23rd meeting and the May 3rd meeting. If there's any corrections, modifications to those, get those to Brooke. Otherwise, they're going to be on the next legislative meeting for adoption or approval. So we can go right into them, like I said, under second reading policies. We can start with the student government policies that we discussed on May 3rd. They are listed 4 through 8 in the agenda. So the first one is policy 228, student government. Do we have any modifications to 228 since our last board meeting? So what my plan is, we're going to go through these, discuss them if we have any discussions, and then what I'm going to do is open it up to community input after these so we can get the discussion then and not have to wait for the rest of the meeting. All right. How about 229? 229 comes with an administrative regulation, which is new.
229.
And there's an error that's brand new.
Let me just look at it again. I looked at it yesterday.
Under 229, the policy, under guidelines, that's just the thought that the word on the number 4 says providing fairness and providing access. I'm not sure if this is over substantial, but I think the word equity is the word that we've been kind of using more.
I think that's more appropriate. It's better descriptive.
Fairness, equity?
Equity.
And my only follow-up thought is where we write, under no circumstances may students involved outside of school property. Does that satisfy what we were talking about earlier in regards to the older and the younger student body yeah, I just want to make sure we address that.
Okay, direct us to specifically on the policy where you're looking at.
The last
green.
Yeah.
Okay, under no service, all right.
and just making sure that because that discussion was pretty significant at that SGA meeting.
Right, we acknowledge that there was a difference between the younger students and the older students.
Exactly.
I might need to pull my notes up, but
Just making sure that language satisfies what we're trying to get at.
That was changed, because that's the idea of the district-sponsored solicitations. Right, and I think that's where, without notification, that's what we decided. We're going to have notification instead of permission, so that way, as long as the parents are notified, that's what
Okay.
I think that's how we rectified it last time. This is the word with the word notification.
Okay. That's good. Just wanted to make sure.
Mm-hmm.
Besides that, I have nothing else on the policy.
What's confusing to me is the PTA is doing the walk for education, the race. Are we saying then they need to specify prior to the race where the money's going? And if it's capital improvements, they need to have approval before they do that? Or can they collect money and then decide what they want to do with it?
That's generally what they do.
I know, but I thought,
Even the AR.
I'm in the AR. Limitations on fundraising. You know, fundraising done by the person, fundraising, capital, but it doesn't.
Yeah, that's a pretty good point. So, the district has to know, unless it's happening on school property or with school resources or whatever, the district has nothing to do with the fundraising, only has to do with the receipt of the funds.
Well,
So, you know, it could have happened 3 years ago for all the district knows.
in terms of raising funds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but,
Well, does this apply to our PTOs and PTAs?
Yeah, it says in-school fundraising, well, in-school
Or student organizations
fundraising.
approved by the board?
All fundraising done for the purpose of being even by a group of staff.
this is really about accepting the gift, which is already in the gifts policy,
Right.
more than it is about the fundraising. I'm not sure that this
Why is
section,
it?
the AR, like looking at bullet one under limitations,
Right.
I'm not sure it even needs to be there.
Well, it's there, number 3 is there to make sure people know that when they raise money, that there is a policy that deals with, there needs to be cross-referenced somehow.
Right.
And we have, same for number 2, we have to approve the receipt of the gift already in 702. But do we actually have to approve a fundraiser that, like if they raise funds and then say, and they tell people, we're raising funds to pay for
Air conditioning. Let me tell you what's going on in Fort Washington,
Air
right?
conditioning.
So conversations at PTA are, let's have fundraisers for air conditioning,
Right.
right?
Okay, so let's say they want to raise funds for central air conditioning.
That's what I mean, then.
Yeah.
Right, they're gonna raise $4 million,
And
right?
they tell everyone they're doing that, and then they try to give us the money, and we say no, because 702, I'm not saying we would, but
Right,
if we
right.
did, because that's something 702 says we should,
That's inequity.
then that's not our problem, if they told people it was air conditioning, we didn't.
Oh, it should be kind of a problem.
Well, 2
Right, so
does
that's the
say-
question, is we want to make sure that they're not saying, hey, we're going to do these giant fundraisers for air conditioning, and we're going to say, no, we're not going to, you
The
can't.
question is if they can do that. According to 2, it says, must approve any fundraising for the purpose of financing materials, supplies, or equipment in excess of 500.
That was very good, the first one was really about,
Right.
Yeah,
Let's
so
do
That was
that.
our equipment. Yeah, and 1 is capital, right?
one is capital food.
Right. No, equipment.
Because I think like SGA just gave a gift, right? I mean, I don't know if that would qualify this. Like their gift this year were the televisions in like the nooks or elbows or whatever you want to call them in the high school, right? Would that have cost, I mean, maybe that cost more than $500 per television.
Yeah.
Would that have, would this policy have come into play? And now, when they did the fundraising, it wasn't for that purpose. They do the fundraising and then they give the gift later on. I guess the
I don't know what they're going to do.
they don't know what to do with it.
This
The
is
other
just where
issue
they
is
do.
if Fort Washington says, we're gonna start planning 15 fundraisers to fundraise for air conditioning, like that's, you know,
Well, they have to notify the district.
yeah, and the district would say, yeah, you can start fundraising for that if you really want to. I mean,
But do we really have the authority to say you can't? We can say, look, you can do that, but we won't necessarily accept the gift because policy 702 says whatever. But we can't.
Yes, we can.
Can we?
PTO, if the PTO ignores your direct instructions, you can withhold their recognized status. They have an organization gets a whole array of emoluments for being went through PTO. Special access, special group of facilities. If somebody is repeatedly violating your rules, you say to them, if you don't stop it, we're going to turn this PTO, control of the PTO to somebody else. We're going to call that, do something. So, yeah.
Nice use of volume.
But again, if this is student fundraising, why are we throwing
Yeah, why
in
is
some
all
other
this up
stuff?
with the PTAs and
Why
PTOs?
did we throw in other categories? This is student fundraising.
But I mean, it could impact the kids too. The kids could say,
Yeah,
we're
they
going to
could
host
say,
it. Yeah.
It would be fundraising on behalf of students. And you're right, so then I need, we don't need this for everyone. We can just make this all about students.
Well, that's what it should be.
Yeah, I think this raises the question of what we want to put in for some of the other fundraising policies for the
Right.
PTAs. and
Right.
PTOs.
Yeah.
I think that's what raises
Exactly.
the question there. And so it needs to be consistent. If we're going to put these limitations on the
Yeah,
kids,
we're
we're going to
talking
put the same
about
limitations on the PTAs.
in-school fundraising by district community groups. But the policy is student fundraising.
All right.
Okay, so take out, so that means we would be taking out
The in-school
in-school
fundraising.
fundraising by approved,
Approved parents, that's what it is.
Yeah, approved parent and staff
And
organizations.
that should be,
and-
that should be elsewhere.
So this is in review, okay, right, it's like in essentially what would be the definition section? Kind of what we're doing. At the top of the AR. I'm gonna take out both of the approved parent staff organizations and by district community groups and other outside organizations. I mean, that's good. They do not really belong in this policy.
Well, how about the online fundraising? Would this pertain only to
Here, okay, let me,
student?
could I, during my, I can get access to do this, or do I have to try to?
If you want to switch here, if you want to,
Do you want to use her computer?
if you want, yeah.
Just so you want to.
So, you know,
It's already, it's already.
yep, it's in a feature.
Yeah. Okay, so. This comes out. Oops. No, this comes out. Whoops. Okay, ready to delete?
Yep.
Oh, backspace.
Yeah, it's the backspace.
Online fundraising stays in, but
Well,
this line here comes out. Okay, it's good, right?
right.
they could.
That comes
And
out.
again, the online fundraising should only pertain to online student fundraising.
It's still, but it does, I mean, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that comes out. The,
I'm proud.
number 3. This comes out. Right?
Look at number 1. I'm not sure where 1 is.
Fundraising for capital expenditures specific, student delegate or student organization creating a program for fundraising. Still on this.
So we can always change the number, it doesn't have to be 2,000, if we want to say bigger number than that.
But they're all pertinent to student fundraising.
Right.
So the point you started with is still, even if taking this out, that's still, yeah, actually.
Well, yeah, do we want policies like this where if they are saying that the fundraising is for a specific purpose, do we want to be able to say yes and no?
At the time of fundraising. which
At the
is
time of
Right, if they know what they're doing, if like, right, and the purpose, I mean, if they're doing a general fundraiser, like when the PTAs do like an auction or something, right? They don't necessarily know until the end of the year or some other point, you know, what they're going to spend their money on.
Yeah.
So that's one thing is when you put it in the general fund, but if they're doing a fundraiser for a specific purpose and it's going to be a capital improvement
Or curriculum.
or curriculum thing, should the district be able to say yes or no?
Well, then does this pertain to the foundation too? When they do an annual,
If they do manual curriculum for a purpose.
so that's it.
Yeah.
So,
That's district sponsored.
it feels like a general statement under limitations on
Right.
fundraising that says, when fundraising, don't quote me on this, I'm just going to say words when fundraising is done or earmarked for a particular purpose, that purpose may need to be approved by the board according to policy 702 at time of payment.
Right, well, and so it's like therefore fundraising done for the purpose of financing in whole or part capital. So I think that's our, for the purpose of, you know, I mean, I think that's what it says. So it's in those situations when fundraising is done in the purpose of.
So that we wouldn't need one or two. Like, it doesn't three cover it? Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Take them out.
Take out 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So that's that.
Yeah, it's just less specific. Well, yeah, so 3 doesn't give us,
It doesn't say that
Ahead of
you
time.
have to get approval, but it does say you have to comply with 702. And therefore, you know, you at least they'll be aware that when they try to donate the money for that purpose, it needs to be in compliance with 702.
right. I mean, I do like the idea to some degree of having to do approval for stuff like large gifts, right? I mean, maybe $2,000 is not the right limit, you know?
5 million.
How about
Yeah.
sentence number 1 again? Say,
I was thinking of that situation, yeah.
organizations are encouraged to consult with
It's not there.
building, the building principal prior to engaging in any such.
Just
Like the building principal, maybe.
For the record,
Administration.
day after day, I receive all of the requests from students to do activities. They're signed off by Kim Callahan, Bob Schultz, and myself, so they really are already doing so.
So the kids are
Very often, though, the amount to be raised, of course, is an estimate.
Sure.
But they explain what their activity will be and how those dollars will be used.
All right, once we say the activity advisor or building principal.
Yeah.
And I think that the other thought is, do we want to change 702 to have approval language after a certain part, like a threshold? Yeah.
You need an
What did you say?
We have
Kim?
an AR for 702?
You need an AR for 702.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So that's, we can do that.
Oh, you do have one.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a,
I'm gonna save these changes.
yeah.
I have another one.
You do?
One more, or people staring at 702
I'm
tomorrow.
almost excited about it.
I don't want to jump in yet.
And you don't say regular, okay, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it makes sense in there, if the situation where a building is saying, hey, we're gonna, raising $25,000 to put a new playground in, you need to make sure that the district is on board with that first of all, at a certain price limit. I don't think 2,000 maybe is the limit that we're looking for because of,
This really such a big deal with student groups, or is it mostly parents?
no, I think it's more parent. That's why I would just put it, that in as like 702
Right.
to apply to the general.
All right, so we need to.
And that's why I think that's where you can have a higher threshold, is that
Should
we're
we bring
talking about.
702 back next month?
That's what I'm thinking, is we bring 702, the AR, yeah.
Or is it something, just regardless of cost, is it something that Bob Lester's going to have to be involved with?
Mhm.
Or if it's computer equipment, is it something that's going to be
Somebody
compatible,
else.
or software and all that stuff?
Right, it's
Yeah.
like, if one of the schools is like, we really want iPads, and it's like, but we are doing Chromebooks, so we need to make sure before they go out and start doing.
Right, so it's not just
Getting
a dollar
fundraising.
amount, it's also
Yeah.
conversation with the
Compatibility.
appropriate director.
Curriculum director, exactly.
Compatibility.
All right. So I think that the what's coming in from number 1 and 2, that was originally in the limitations, that idea should go into 702.
Yeah.
And we can play with the numbers and things like that. That's a broader
Yeah.
point. But for the kids, I think taking it out of there, and plus then they have to comply with seven rules anyway, so I don't imagine the kids are using $25,000
Not the.
for specific reasons like this.
Listen, the PTO does it backdoor air conditioning for Washington.
Mhm. They're the kids, yeah. It's like frozen pizza sales, so.
All right, I got one more little one.
All right, so this is back on the AR now of 229, correct?
Yeah, yeah. Under online fundraising, up near the top, in the, what we'll call the definition section, second sentence, if administrative approval is granted, in almost every other case, we're very specific about what that means. Like who approves.
All right. Superintendent or designee?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because designee is going to be,
We'll
not
probably
going to be
need to-
superintendent.
Well, throw a link to a website and just make it taking it. Communications, right?
Some of them.
The designee.
Or designee.
And Brooke, if we can, just on the, all the policies in the ARs that you referenced, we could just add it to the bottom as well, as a cross-reference. So we mentioned
Oh,
policy
and the link
272
to
in
it.
the AR, yeah, exactly. Be great.
So we will bring back a revised, proposed revisions to the AR 7.
Okay, great. All right. Any other changes to AR 229? From my board members? Policy committee, okay.
Ken, I'm just bothered by the limitation number 2. How do we directly or indirectly pressure district students to prioritize fundraising activities over religious observances?
What?
Where are you?
What are you? Where are you?
We're number 2 under limitations
For
of
staff
staff.
Just give me an example of that.
Where are
I mean, it just seems like out of place just to make that statement.
That's a
There.
good start fundraising.
Because it happened
Here
here,
for religious observances.
it happened somewhere.
I missed that.
It must have happened somewhere.
It's happened somewhere.
It just seems bizarre. Not to directly or indirectly
Yeah, I
pressure
don't
district students to prioritize
You
fundraising.
don't really need it.
Need
You
that.
Over
Yeah, that
religious
seems, we
observances.
don't,
you have number 1, so you really don't need it. I think that
Does that mean a fundraiser that occurs on Christmas or in Showa or?
It probably is. I wish I could recall why that was put in there.
Or Saturdays or Sundays, you know. If
Yeah, I think that's probably more like-
Probably it.
Directly
Yeah.
or indirectly pressure district students.
Sorry, you know, I celebrate on Saturday,
Right.
and I'm not gonna do that.
I shouldn't be pressuring.
That's it.
Should leave it in? I don't know. I don't see the need.
You already have
number 1.
Yeah, I think we just should take out number 2.
That's the reason it's in there.
Okay.
All right. 230. Police response for public performances.
I have a
We
question.
have an AR attached to this.
All right, yeah, I have a question on the
Okay.
230. What, we doing policy? or-
Policy first.
Policy.
Make sure we're good with the policy. Sometimes they love going down, sometimes they do not.
Okay, there really is nothing in, I mean, the policy is very, very broad and how it should be.
Right, it's, we can pull by your administrative regulation.
So, that's fine. Let's see the AR.
I have actually a question here.
Are you looking at the AR?
The AR, the one, I what I had right at the top.
Next section, approval.
Right under approval process. So, first sentence, first thing on the approval process, public performance shall be pre-approved. So this sort of presumes that this is happening off of school property, because it's a public performance,
Right.
which isn't well defined, but I think that that's what it means. And then it says, public performances that take place outside the boundaries of the school district. So,
That's
are there
it.
public performances that don't take place outside? Like if it takes place at another school or outside the school, but on school property or something like that? Like, is there a version
Yeah.
of public performance that's not?
I can give you one.
Yeah.
Community day. Community day, you've got high school kids.
But that's not on school property.
Sure it is.
Well, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Depends where it
Could be.
on the township property.
I guess.
What, Foundation Day?
Foundation Day is at Jordan's.
Right.
I'm thinking, is there a public performance that takes place on school property?
Well, what do you mean by public
Like a
performance?
theater
in public?
performance?
I don't know.
It could
That's something that applies to this policy.
Or musicals that are open to the community?
Well, the answer is there probably are, but let's get past
Need to
this. Do
find-
we need to make a difference? Do we need to make a distinction between them?
Well, that's really my question. So the first thing seems to suggest that we must. There have to be chaperones. I mean, maybe the appropriate number of chaperones is 0 for some. I don't know if it's on some property, but
When they go to a
it
nursing
just seems to
home,
conflate these two things.
when the chorus goes to the nursing home to perform on holidays, that's
Yeah.
a public performance.
Yeah. Clearly.
It's pre-approved by the principal.
And it also requires prior approval of director of curriculum because it's outside school boundaries. Second.
And if it does that.
Right.
I think it does, I think it does.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, isn't that all public performances? Because I'm just having trouble coming up with public performances.
All right, I'll give you another one. What is it, Mr., I don't know if he still does this or not. Who's the guitar teacher?
Smith.
Mr. Smith, he used to have a concert once a year for the kids in his class. It was almost like and it was, and anybody could come. It wasn't a student organization, it was a public performance by students.
Well, our shows are public performances, our musicals are public performances.
Right.
In schools.
But like,
In
right.
school, right?
Yeah, music in our schools as well.
Music in our schools,
Schools,
are
yeah.
public performances.
Okay.
Even like equity and excellence. Like,
So those are,
they have
so those, so do those fall into this policy? I just want to make sure. We're saying that like the musical, the spring musical falls into this policy. Is that true? I wasn't reading it, when I read it the first time, I wasn't thinking that's what we were talking about here.
You know, what better is music in our schools, where we need chaperones to bring kids from the elementary schools and the middle schools, to supervise the students, and we do have chaperones at those performances. So,
Do we require parent and guardian permission before students may participate in music in our schools?
I think we do, yeah. I think we do. But we should
If we
differentiate.
don't, we should.
Yeah.
But your point, the first paragraph, public performances should differentiate are those that take place in or outside of the boundaries. And that's what you, I think you're
So
saying.
that's what started my
That's
question.
the question.
Correct.
But
It's all public.
it sounds to me like if we're talking about music in schools counts, then it's fine, as written. That's just not what I thought at the beginning when I started reading this, and I wonder if we need a definition to clarify what public performance means.
Yeah, so why don't we just add a definition of what public performance is?
Yeah.
It can happen in school, or
It's not about location, it's about
So-
who's in attendance.
welcome, yeah.
So we put that in red.
Isn't that in the policy?
No,
Is it?
put it in red. It
Not
was,
in the
it
policy.
was defined and it was
Removed.
determined that it wasn't used effectively. But I think it's better in red.
I'm just gonna make a note.
I'll give you one.
Okay.
Because I think you want it to say more than public events sponsored by the district, which feature student participation. And we want to give some examples.
And that second paragraph, outside of the boundaries, should include the statement that's in the first paragraph about the appropriate number of chaperones.
Are you?
Well,
you're
already-
ready to go?
So all performance permits
I'm
shall
in
be
the red.
approved by the building principal.
Yeah, and these are probably appropriate number coverage. It's already covered.
It's covered because it's in the first paragraph?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
So is it the boundaries of the school district? So that's the other thing is, are we talking about Upper Dublin Township? The boundaries of the school
That's
district?
what I
Are we
think
saying
that's-
district property?
I think it's outside of,
I think it's,
District property?
no,
Or
no,
Upper
I
Dublin
don't think
Township?
that means outside of township.
Okay, so I think that's what needs to be clarified, is that if we're talking about people going outside of Upper Dublin Township and not the school district.
then we have to get the director of curriculum as well.
What?
Yes.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
If
Instead of
they're
saying
between the
outside the
schools,
boundaries
When
of
Vox, when Vox,
Upper Dublin, the school, it is the
when Vox
boundaries
performs
of
that
Upper Dublin
version, when
Township.
Vox performed that version,
Right,
it required the approval.
right. So the
of-
boundaries of Upper Dublin Township.
Right, that's.
Correct. Yes, right.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so the other thing I had was at the bottom. District may regulate the recording of district-sponsored public performances to the extent permitted by law. Do we need the sort of reciprocal statement that says there are limitations on when they're performing in public, there's limitations on what we can prevent? So if they're performing in public at Hershey, we can't say that you said no pictures can be taken of them, we can't regulate that anymore. So if Vox is performing in Hershey,
You record.
and someone in the
A group.
Vox,
some-
the
I'll say
Upper
Vox,
Dublin.
it could be anybody. And somebody who happens to be at Hershey that day holds up their iPhone and records the performance.
Or PSBA does, and they use it then in their promotional
Right.
stuff, which is.
Well,
what
for promotional
actually
purposes is another, that's a whole other
This is
set of
the
laws.
sold.
Mhm.
But like, someone said, some parent said,
Right.
my student may not be used, the images of my student may not be used. We
By
can't
the
control
district.
that.
But yeah, but it's by the district, and we.
Right,
would-
I said, do we need to reiterate that here and say,
Well, you said we can control, but we do. I mean, we can to some extent. I mean, we can control it as much in Hershey as we can here.
Right.
You just put on the program, no recording permitted, blah, blah, blah. People who are recording will be asked to leave. You put all this stuff on the
when
program.
they go to the mall, there's no program that says, there's no notification to the people who are walking by about their limitations on their rights to record in a public place. The mall's not a public place, that was an example, but you get the idea.
Yeah. I guess in that case, we would have to let people know, the parents know that their kids, what they're consenting to, the consent form should have to say. You understand that it could be filmed, it could be public. I mean, that should be part of the consent form. I was thinking this was really more about talking about the district recording it and then like broadcasting
Right.
on cable, violating copyright or something like that.
Yeah, I think it is. It just prompted the thought that there's a converse statement could be made. I'm not sure if it's, my question is, should it be made?
And
It's
it says-
easier to be made.
It says regulated.
Because there's limitations on what we can regulate.
It's a permitted by law and ensure, I'm going to ensure compliance with people getting sign-offs, because I hate to miss a sign-off.
I know.
When it was clearly obvious that the kid was going to be performing better. All right, well, does that address your concern, or do you think something needs to be put in here?
I just wanted to have the discussion.
If we put it on the permission slip, just a notification by granting consent, you're acknowledging your child may be photographed.
I want to call it the permission, parent notifications to parents.
Consent.
But if it's going on the consent sheet, otherwise how do we get it out unless we put it in the handbook that parents sign off on?
I mean, we notify the parents, we send them a letter saying this is what's happening. Your child is participating in it. Here's what's going to happen, but we don't say, sign this and send it back.
Right, it's just another.
So we send, in addition to a permission form, we send a separate letter?
So it's every time Vox like goes and.
Either one, whatever, if you're already getting permission for the event,
Yes.
then add that so that when the sign up comes, it's got that on there. I'm saying if you weren't already sending it, if you send permission, if you send consent forms every time the kid does a public performance on school or on school property, then they just had to do the permission form, otherwise just to be a notification.
I certainly don't sign a consent form every time my kids perform in what we're now defining as a public performance. But maybe I did early on, or there was implied consent by virtue of participating in the program or something.
Do we add it to the student handbooks that are signed off on by parents, right?
Yeah, maybe that's where I did it.
Maybe that's the place to put it, because we're not going to send a consent form. The kids go to sing at the nursing home, that's fine and dandy. It doesn't mean somebody else visiting there might not record this lovely performance.
Yeah, I'm especially concerned about when they perform out of a nursing home, but they're performing out on the sidewalk and it's public property. And if you're on public property, you can be, anything you can see in public, you're allowed to photograph.
But today, with these things being so ubiquitous, you can be photographed.
Do you add it under the opt-out? So there's an opt-out for photos being published. I have to check a list. So do you note that if you say, no, I don't want my child photographed or posted on the website, underneath maybe have a disclaimer that says, please note if it's a public, something like that?
Performance, they could still,
Right.
like, it's not gonna be on the district.
You know what I
it's done
mean? Some
somewhere
kind
else.
of.
Yeah, well, that permission is not saying my child can't be photographed, it's saying the district may not publish photographs of
Well, right,
my child.
that's fine.
When I sit in the back of the auditorium.
And that still holds. The
Any
district
musical
won't.
performance,
Yeah,
people are cutting, and then they're posting to Facebook. So
yeah.
we're not protecting anybody's rights, because even if they're there, they're filming it and
Yeah.
posting it.
I mean, there is realistically a purpose concern too, because, by doing so, we're saying, well, the student participates in the school district, and that right there is a protected piece of data.
But we can't control it.
Yeah.
Ooh, so what do we want to add? Notifications to parents, including but not limited to permission forms or the student handbook, shall reference that public performances may be recorded.
What's
By-
that statement that we put at the front of our agendas now? Please be alert that someone may be filming you.
Right.
Yeah, it's right in the front here.
And again, our policy rec on the,
Same sort of thing.
yeah,
Well, that's what we'll do.
Yeah.
That tells that. Okay, so notification to parents,
yeah.
including but not limited to permission forms.
Will this be the last paragraph?
Yeah, it's a courtesy.
Yeah, the very last paragraph.
Your private remarks are not recorded by other members of the public. This would be that your child may be photographed.
Okay, so
Yeah, there's more, that's good, but as it's written, it says, no recordings of performance may be sold without prior permission. It's not really just about sales, it's about
Publishing.
use for.
no, this is a separate paragraph.
Okay, so I think we need to come back to this one then.
Okay, notification to parents, guardians, including not limited to permission forms and the student handbook, comma.
Performance?
Permission forms. Permission forms.
And the student handbook.
Comma. Should be a comma before including. Shall contain a reference that public performances by students may be recorded.
Regard. Should include a reference regarding.
A reference that public performances by students may be recorded by third parties. Well, say that by third parties.
Yeah, I was gonna say, whatever they want.
And then we have the control over what happens with those recordings, or is that applied?
Reporting by third parties, outside the control of the district. No comment. No comment there. Third parties, outside the control of the district.
Okay. So the sentence about no recordings of such performances may be sold without prior permission of the superintendent should be about more than sales, because sometimes it's just publishing for commercial purposes or used for commercial purposes, sort of thinking of copyright law. So, even if there's no money involved, it still shouldn't be able to be
Distributed also.
used in advertising, for example.
Okay, all right. I'm with my kids for public performance, I'm putting it on an iPhone, and then stream it to my kid's grandmother.
Yeah, I'm not trying to cover that. I'm trying to cover, Nike wants to use it in an ad. Because I can't front wearing Nikes. I don't know why I picked Nike, but.
Okay, here we go. Okay, we're ready. No recordings of such performance or images. Actually, okay, back up. No recordings of or images from such performances may be used for commercial purpose, may be sold or otherwise used for commercial purposes. Okay.
All right. I'm done causing trouble.
All right, are we good with 2:30? Like,
A, you're not causing trouble. B, you're certainly not.
we already know that.
And C.
Right now.
Well, one more thought on this area, it's just some of the language that we usually typically have in regard to, so we have the costs or the revenue that might be for teachers, et cetera, and things like that, but we typically have language for students who may not be able to financially participate. That language is not in this. Should it be included in there? Under that, I'm thinking in that second paragraph in particular, where it says starts with students. So if there's a cost involved, let's say, for example, the course goes down to the Sixers team, that we're saying the same language that we typically have in all these policies, that someone who can't afford it would not be into that.
Yeah, we have a need.
Yeah,
I need sentence about it.
that makes sense. And then, where else do we have? This is policy.
This is the AR.
And this is second, it's got our second reading, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Why don't you maybe we should just cross-reference the economically disadvantaged policy?
Okay.
Okay.
I don't think it belongs in this paragraph, but this paragraph is really about the first sentence. It's actually regarding the English quotations. It's somewhere. I don't think it's out there.
Maybe just on the end, cross-reference down here. Put a,
This is in the second paragraph that the students shall be protected.
so maybe then.
Maybe it's actually up above under approval process where it says parental guardian's permission is required.
required. You know, it could be a sentence at the end of that one, or it could be a new paragraph under that section. You know, you don't need to, because it is about approval, you know.
Yeah, that's just,
Because if you funds to do it, unless you don't. So I think it belongs in this section, either in this paragraph or it doesn't.
Right.
So we're just putting a cross-reference in or a sentence?
I guess a sentence if you're putting it in an approval process. Something basic from the other one.
Here we go. Why are we comfortable just cross-referencing policy, participation in curricular programs and activities by economically disadvantaged students? You know, feel comfortable just doing that as a cross-reference?
All right.
Or should the body of the policy?
it's fine.
It's 144.
So policy 144?
Policy and administrative regulation numbers. Number one.
All right, do we have a lot for 232 and 235, guys? Because Kristen needs to be gone by 3 o'clock, so I'm just trying to figure out if we want to skip around, or if we have a lot of robust conversation for the last two policies here.
What number did you say?
So the last two student policies we have are 232 and 235.
I have nothing for this.
Sarah, I think my piece is gonna take 5 minutes.
Okay, great, so.
Yeah, that.
So what do you recommend? What do we do?
My question, do we have anything for 232 and 235? You don't tell me what it is right now, just do you have comments?
I do not.
Thought I had something in the reg.
I don't think we have regs for 232 or
Okay,
235.
then it must be in the. Okay, 32, student rights and responsibility. It was in the policy that referenced the middle school organization and then SGA.
Okay.
Was that in 235?
5. Or maybe it's actually either. All right, I think Kristen's just here for 808.
The AR, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Do we have a lot for this, guys, too? I'm just trying to figure out
I
timeline.
do not.
Okay. All right, so then let's take a break from the student policies. Let's do the 808 so we can get Kristen out of here.
Okay. Policy?
All right, so we have a policy 808 for second reading, and then we have an administrative regulation too. Kristen sent an email around at lunchtime today, with just a couple of other edits, I think. I don't know if there's anything else besides that.
I just had asked that the FERPA policy was attached to the AR, because just as a cross-reference. And additionally, I just recommended we had some language, I recommended a second, a replacement language if we accepted the form that I'm suggesting. And so as we left off our last meeting with kind of having a conversation about if we were going to use, or if we were going to allow donated funds to offset the bad debt from student meal balances. So I wrote some language that would guide the parents with the ability to transfer, to donate, or to get a refund.
It's here.
Is it here?
It's go to 9 and then like 4 pages into 9.
It's like 3 through 8.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Then, so the second piece, the second highlighted paragraph, right where you were at, Brooke, on the screen. Yep. So that second piece is the recommendation I make the change if you adopt the form that I'm suggesting. And that form is a fillable form that the school, that can be sent electronically, and where the students would, or I'm sorry, where the families would have the option to donate the remaining balances in their students' accounts to offset that debt incurred. That would go directly to the general fund. No, well, the account, it would, I think, go to the general fund because bad debt goes to the general fund. Not that, this is not delinquent debt, this is bad debt. Or they could transfer funds from one student's household to another. Sometimes we have our seniors that are graduating, but there's younger students still in the home. So no problem, I can donate that, or I can transfer that money. Or they would like a refund of their existing balance. So right now what's been happening is I think that the PTA let families know that they can get a refund, which is no problem. The problem is that they didn't tell the families, don't take off your auto refill.
Right.
So having a little something more official, because the protocol, if you'll remember, is I get the request, we have to create this, the parent as a vendor, we have to write a check, and the check gets mailed out. So it's administrative burden-wise, it's, at least an hour and a half of work.
Is there a minimum dollar amount?
No, we didn't really discuss that as a board or as a committee at the last time. So either way, I've supplied the editable form that can be mailed directly to me. And then the information in the policy would support, again, that donation, which I did have a lot of families ask me if they could donate funds this year. I think the lunch shaming and meal charging policy, because it was like a Pennsylvania, this is, very important to Pennsylvania, and while we're here, we changed our meal charging policy. I think it became very popular, and our community was very aware and wanted to support. With that being said, so that second paragraph, I made a recommendation to change the language. Additionally, I wanted to make clear again that adults and staff are not permitted to make any purchases without sufficient funds. We've definitely had an issue with this. So I want to be very clear that although this is the intent of the, we've surrounded all of this charging with the students, but I have no obligation to let adults charge.
I've got a question for you. Mr. Baggins hasn't happened yet. So somebody makes a donation, somebody uses this form. What acknowledgement do they get from the school district that they made the donation? If any?
That's a great question.
It may not be
Yeah.
an answer. Here's what's going to happen. Somebody's going to say, I'm going to donate $200 to this fund.
Mhm,
They're going to want a letter. So they're going to want to take it as a tax deduction.
mhm.
I'm not 100% sure this is even tax deductible. So I guess who's going to do it? Who's going to do that? That's just another administrative burden.
Yeah. So I guess what we're looking at
I guess
is,
it does come out. I don't want to say this part's not here, but
Yeah.
I guess it's they would come out of the business office somewhere.
sure.
Just like any other donation.
Well, that's actually, I guess that would be the question I ask. What is the, what's the procedure now? Clearly, we just spent an hour talking about donations.
Right.
We have to be getting something, so what's the protocol for those tax sheets now?
This is I don't know, do you get any donations directly to the district? Most people donate to the foundation.
Well, like,
Yeah, there's not.
We have occasionally, someone just
Okay,
contacted us
this will
for
be-
some piano.
This could
Yeah.
this could be 20 or 30 a year.
Oh,
absolutely.
donations to property happen a lot more often than donations.
The money, yeah.
Right.
Oh, I would think so, yes. Usually donations of money, it's tied to a fundraiser and
Right.
there's a stipulated purpose.
Right, if somebody else already raised it, some other
Right.
nonprofit already, it's just it's a conduit for
Mhm.
that.
How much money do people tend to have left in their accounts?
So right now, inactive students, and this is before I even got here to present, have $8,000 in the account.
Wow.
And that's how many kids?
It's lot of kids.
I mean,
It's 18 pages worth of kids.
And these are graduates or children who've left?
Both, for sure. And since I've gotten here, we've definitely been doing a much better job of getting those refunds. But, I mean, if it's $5, you're just like, whatever, just leave it. You can't get it refunded back to their credit card because the third party that we use doesn't do the refund back. And because, quite frankly, the money's in our account already. So this year alone, I probably I've sent to the business office about 20, 25 checks to write refunds. But as far as years past, before I got here, I think it was around $6,000. So I've only accrued $2,000.
Do we want a time limit in the policy after so many years?
I would really appreciate that time limit.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if this was feasible or not.
I mean, that's right, after so long, you know,
Yeah.
you don't get your money back.
Well, but I think there should be an amount too. I mean,
That's what I mean, I'm looking at a couple things. So the first thing is the time limit, she's saying there's another thing about the amount.
yeah,
It
there's
has
administrative.
to meet administrative fees.
Yeah.
Do we
Can we,
have,
can we do
Their
that?
money, is it-
do we have
Can we?
examples from other districts?
No. No, we do not.
I've never had any school district, I've had other school districts talk about the issue of uncollectible lunches,
But no.
donations.
Correct.
I've never had one talk
Too much
about
money.
what happens if somebody overpaid.
Right.
We're in a unique situation for sure.
Right, that's technically, yeah.
If somebody overpaid, and you set it out there, I don't think you would put it, I don't know if you could put it.
Well, 5 years, I mean, they graduate school, they don't do anything, for 5 years, this money's just sitting in our account, right? And
It really,
what do we do with it?
It absolutely affects my budget because it's, you
It's an
know,
accrual.
it's an accrual every single year that I don't touch because potentially someone could ask for the money back.
No, I misunderstood, so the $8,000 is overpayment, not underpayment.
Right.
Correct.
Oh, I thought that was.
It's money left over.
It's money left over. They
The
didn't,
kids
right.
moved away, or they graduated, we just have extra money sitting in the account, what do we do with
Mom
it?
says there's 20 bucks, just walk away from it.
Right, so we can contact the family, and let them know, like, you got 20 bucks, we never hear anything back from it, what the heck do we do with this?
Which go back to general fund.
Right, so that's where, do we have a time limit, after so many, that's, I don't know the legal parts of it.
Yeah.
And that part gets a little hairy as well because my budget is completely separate from the general fund and they didn't pay the general fund. They paid the
Right.
food services account.
Okay.
So technically it's my income. I mean, the food services income. I will say the burden of contacting these folks could be really high for me.
Right.
So I'm just gonna pull up really quickly so that we do understand. Just the students who have 20 or more dollars left in their account right now that are considered inactive, and that would not be our current seniors, clearly, they're still enrolled.
They're not active.
Well, I mean, they're enrolled.
Technically, yeah.
So, we're looking around $6,000
20 or more.
just for 20 or more, so around $2,000 for 20 or unders.
Okay. Do you know how long, what your, like, oldest payment in there is?
I have to find that out.
Okay, yeah, I mean, just like, if you know.
How about if we just send out a letter once a year or email blast or somebody in the district saying, anybody who still has money left in their account is going to be donated
Right.
Yeah.
to such and such.
Oh,
Unless, of course, there has to be an unless, unless you make the request within, for refund within 30 days.
That's, I mean, you could put that notification
Yeah, it should
language
be- it
in
should
your
be-
policy that says after so long.
It should not be left hanging like that where it's.
No, we can say that, but
Hanging,
then, you know,
forever.
again, just make sure we time that for a time when, I guess we just request that.
And, but then it's, what do we do with all the kids, like, the kids, those 18 pages right now of people that have left the district? They're not around, so-and-so moved, or kids have graduated, what do we do with, to figure out that $8,000 that we have?
Well, technically,
Here's what
if the
I-
policy goes into place and you say 6 months, because ultimately what I really want to do is clean my books every year.
Exactly.
Right.
So if the policy gets installed and then 6 months later, this list doesn't shrink, then the income is the income. The policy stands.
And if somebody comes back 4 years from now and says, hey, I want the 20 bucks that was in my account,
We'll give it to them.
do we stop?
Yeah.
I'm wondering if this counts as unclaimed property for the Pennsylvania Department of Treasury.
I don't know, I think that's.
Because
Although
it does
we'll have
cover
to-
government,
this will
it
have to
says
be-
government entities are one of the possible holders of
And
unclaimed
then
property.
to see if we should.
All right.
Because it's cheap.
So you
this
will do
will-
some research.
Do some
and
research
that-
regarding that, so that's gonna be added on to the AR later on.
I will.
All right, but for today, the changes that we have are having the form, adding this language so they can fill out the form. And then we know where the money goes.
And I think that we just simply updated,
So, yeah,
the application for free and reduced meals website was updated, I believe, yeah. mhm.
yes. And Chris,
Yeah.
the phrase that you have for adults and staff are not permitted, it should just be students only are permitted to,
That, fair enough.
okay.
Where is it?
Is that in her email?
In her email,
Oh,
she said less include adults and staff are not
Oh.
permitted to many purchase without sufficient funds. It should be students only, and that way you won't have.
I'm sorry, you know what, Sarah, let me just ask you to repeat that because I don't know if that covers it.
Okay.
So are you suggesting it says students only are not permitted to?
Are permitted to make any purchase.
only students are.
Only
That,
students.
that's not necessarily true.
Okay,
They're not allowed to make any purchase. They're only allowed to buy a reimbursable meal, not a la carte. So that's the only difference in the language.
So then what's the appropriate policy language? So students are permitted, only students may make purchases without sufficient funds, and those purchases are limited to a reimbursable meal.
as
Or whatever.
limited by this policy or whatever.
That's fine, that'll work.
Okay.
Okay, so,
So we are replacing the sentence.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna put the language in right
Right
now.
now, right, just, you know,
but the rec is regulation like that.
right, it's all regulated.
And we're taking this one out because it's gonna be replaced with hers.
Right. All right.
I could try to, I already surveyed local districts regarding this refund policy and they just don't have the,
Right.
that's not it's a non-issue to them, so.
Because they use a different mechanism for collecting money in the first place, or they just automatically keep the money?
The second,
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, income's income,
Right,
so.
okay. All right, so are we good then for
That's
the,
what restriction survey.
I know, 808?
Oh,
Yeah, I actually, I surveyed many in Montgomery County.
Okay. All right, so we're good with 808?
Yep.
Great.
You would want us to do community
On 808?
Well, after this.
after the students.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, and we're good with 232. I thought that R2 had some changes to the one policy.
Oh, 232.
235.
231 of those, yeah,
If I can find it.
if he can find it. If not, he loses his right.
Right, that's my right.
right.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Kristen. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
I don't see anything,
You know, all right.
I don't see it in 232.
For community.
235.
We had suggested we were going to take some of this out and move it to student expression. Is that what you're thinking of maybe? Because that was in 232.
I think you did. Is that what you did?
But we don't have student expression here.
No, we're not going to 220.
But you don't have a 220?
Well, we have one, we do. We were going to take some of this and put it into the student expression policy. Some of the stuff we crossed out of 232. We were going to put into, what we discussed at last meeting. Was put in-
Putting some of this into 220 because that we're taking out here.
Yeah. Is that, I don't know if that's what you're thinking.
No,
I see any problem.
I'm not looking at the policy, that would help too if it was the right policy.
I don't see any.
Is it under the AR?
It's just a policy, it's ARs for these guys. So, because we talked about some of the language that we were taking out, the
Like bullet number 2, feel free to express without fear or wrong.
2 and 3, yeah. Or no, 2 we're gonna put into, we're gonna put a lot of it in, like into 220 and then,
Are you, just 230?
I'm looking at 232.
yeah.
I would say it's
We were on 235.
Oh,
Well, that helps. Another bullet, which we did, put that one into, in a bullet point.
Yeah, I would want to have a read. This is a first reading or second?
This is a second.
Well, if it's. I see what you're saying. You're not comfortable taking this out until it's going to add into some of this.
Well, I think we said we could take it out, we just wanted to make sure that the things that we were taking out, we were putting into 220, so we should add
Or
220.
already covered it.
yeah.
Right, right.
By the way, I don't know if some districts at least are looking at 220 and adding student walkout things.
Visiting 220 anyway.
Then we look at it too. All right, so what we just want to do is put 220 on the schedule. And we will make sure that we're looking at 232 at the time, to make sure we're covering, it's covered with
The
stuff.
old, we need to look at the old.
The old 232,
Yeah.
to make sure that anything that we changed,
That's true. Yeah, I think
if it doesn't cover it,
I
it
think you can be
covers.
comfortable that 220 is sufficient to cover what you're doing now. Yeah.
There's probably some overlap in 235 as well, where we're releasing the responsibility of the student, but some of those would also be under student expression, including dress codes and,
I don't think there was anything taken out of 235.
no, the additions, the,
Well, just in group,
Three.
that's
We talked about
the responsibility of the student, not right.
Right.
That's correlated.
Cross-reference
I agree
220.
with overlap, but
Yeah.
still belongs here too.
some of these I just thought were covered. My question was, are some of these covered already in other policies, so we need to redundant?
And we used to have a student survey
Oh, for
policy we
sure.
talked about.
Yeah.
The whole thing, I don't think you need 235 to be honest with you. Everything's covered, everything here is covered by existing policy.
Yeah.
235 is unnecessary. 235 is when everybody used to have their, it was like an omnibus student policy, they put in there. Visibility, they would put in there, freedom of expression, they would put in their locker
Oh,
rooms,
right.
they put this. And the thing ended up being like 140 pages, and now, over time, it's been gradually cannibalized to have separate policies for all these things that used to be in 235. I don't think it's in 235 at all.
I would probably want to go through and make sure that these things are, that the things that we want to be somewhere are actually somewhere, just to be sure. That's why we haven't gone through that.
And I don't know, policies and all.
Let's do that for your review next time.
Just, I can do that, I mean, but just looking at, the board's authority to establish reasonable rules and regulations for the conduct of the department of district students. Yes, they're in the district, they're in the dress and grooming policies, they're in the law enforcement policies. Which I saw the student be provided with equal treatment, okay, fine, that's in the expulsion policy, that's in the discrimination policy. But the concern I would have about keeping this policy is that people may think this is all there is.
Right.
Yeah. Well, cross references.
you'd be cross-referencing.
Every other policy.
There's nothing that this covers.
There's something you cover separately, you're right,
How about
I
that?
agree. Okay, so I think we're just talking about,
So we're gonna bring that one back again as a second reading.
yeah, we can bring it back again and then we can start repealing it if we think we can just repeal it if everything else is covered in that. So we can bring it back to whenever the next policy committee meeting is.
That's 235, correct?
Yeah, that's 2:35. So this is gonna come back to the next PC meeting and then,
With 220.
yeah, to consider repeal. And then we will also add 220 on our agenda to make sure that's covering all the things we want it to cover.
PSBA recently reached 2 points.
All right, so we can look at that then, yeah. All right. Are we good with 222, or 322, 235? I can't say any numbers anymore. Okay,
One for 228, sir?
what?
228?
Yeah, do you want to talk about that one again?
There was just one
Okay.
minor thing with 228, that's the one I was
That was the one we're thinking
looking
of.
at.
Okay.
In 228, it makes reference early and differentiates the Cardinal Council and the Student Government Association.
Right.
I'm assuming that's correct. At the middle school, we call them the Cardinal Council.
I've never heard that term before.
Well, that's one thing I'm asking, because later in the policy, it only refers to, in delegation of responsibility, item 3, it only references Student Government Association and not the Cardinal Council.
They call it Principals Council or something?
That's a
I
different.
don't,
There's a student government at the middle school, I don't remember what it's called, but I've never heard it called a Cardinal Council. There's a student government like elected
well,
by the students kind of body, and then there's the PLPC, the principals.
Right, the kids now, you know.
okay, but anyway, the authority makes,
Council, I don't
it
know.
makes reference to Cardinal Council.
Well, the PLPC
Is
is
there any
really
other-
going to be.
Does anyone know what the middle
Middle
school
school
SGA is called?
Student council is what we.
Yeah, it should be student council.
Student
Student
council.
council.
Nobody calls it the Cardinal Council?
I've never heard of cardinal council.
So, my question was about the Cardinal Council,
yeah, SJ.
and then in delegation of authority, item 3, it only references Student Government
So
Association.
let's take out cardinal, put student, and then add student council into the.
3? Yeah, okay.
Do we want to be specific, SRMS, student council, and UDHS? Just so we're clear what we're talking about there, in case they change their name in the future.
Whatever.
That makes sense.
I just never heard of Cardinal.
They predate.
I do like that.
Yeah, I do like that name.
That was the only thing to it.
Okay. All right, so I think that we're covered the ones that were for second reading and review. So.
Okay, yeah, you don't need to say no, it says official voice from student.
Right, so let that say it on there. Yeah, so what my suggestion is to open it up to community input at this point to discuss the policy. I mean, they can discuss any of the policies, but. So, yeah, we are open for community input. If you would like to speak, we have a general limitation of 4 minutes. If you could just say your name and what part of the township you live for the record, so that
Oh, yes.
the camera hears it, and then we also know your name, that would be good too, so.
Okay. I'm Eden Astorino. I said, I'm from Drescher.
Yep.
I'm Ben Helsner and I'm from Ambler.
So the one concern we had with 228 was under guidelines, when it says it's crossed out, the Cardinal Council and the Student Government Association shall be fully responsible for the planning, organization, or coordination of the following activities. Its own government and activities and projects suggested by the students were crossed off. And we feel like that's an important part of student government because right now we are responsible for the planning and coordination of our government and activities. So I guess we're sort of wondering why that was crossed out and if we can uncross it.
Right.
Which number was that?
228.
Yeah,
Under guidelines.
Guidelines, the first, not the second, on the first page where it's crossed out. And For the, again, this is kind of a reiteration of what we were talking about last meeting. The crossed out third one on the second page require that decisions made and actions taken by the student government on and on, shall not be voided or vetoed by any staff member. And we were wondering why this was still crossed off, and we were wondering if possibly if you were worried that now it wouldn't be beholden to anyone because the stuff about the board being responsible for a lot of decisions has been taken out of this, now superintendent designee. We were wondering if you would want that policy, but just to say you shall not be voided or vetoed by any staff member except for the superintendent or designee. And then lastly, this is like a little wording thing. So the third one that's there, prohibit retaliation against or the imposition of school-based discipline upon students for participation in authorized student government activities. Well, first of all, we definitely like this change and we're very appreciative of it. But the wording can be a little like confusing and not exact. Like the clauses, depending on how you read it, the clauses mean different things. Like prohibit retaliation against, or the imposition of. If you take the imposition of as the second clause, it like changes the meaning of the sentence. And I don't know, that was just like a minor thing. Anything else to this?
That's it.
Yeah, that's all. Thank you very much.
All right. So we're all looking at 228.
Right.
So the first suggestion was about, or comment about guidelines. About keeping essentially the guidelines section in.
Yes.
Just you can withdraw cardinal council unless you come up with other name of student council.
Right. So, I mean, that's the thing. We don't know anything really about the middle school, right? So we don't know if the student, we don't know anything about the student council since we didn't even know what the title was about. Are they fully responsible for planning, organizing, coordinating, the following their stuff? I mean, I'm guessing the middle school has more input with
The administration and
adults.
teacher leaders probably have more input than they do in the high school.
Yes.
I would imagine, yeah.
Yes.
But I think they are still, with guidance, nominally
Fully responsible.
responsible for their own
I
government.
don't think they're fully responsible.
So we can take out the word fully, I think.
Well, I think that's really
That's
the
where
words
the
that.
crux.
Yeah.
That's the crux.
Well, if you're unsure about what the middle school does,
Right.
then there can be guidelines for what the middle school organization is, and then separately, the Student Government Association, because we know what it is at the high school.
Right.
And I think if you get rid of the Cardinal Council and use guidelines and just put in that for the high school, I think that's more applicable.
I think so.
And then we can always add a guideline for whatever the wording is for Student Council.
So we're talking guidelines for SGA.
Yeah, just take out the wording, the Cardinal Council, for at least that part, and then leave 1 and 2 underneath it if that's possible.
It's one for the crossed out,
Yes,
right?
yes.
All right, I have a question. So I agree that fully is an important word here. Do we mean solely responsible? And what does fully responsible mean? Does that mean that nobody else is responsible, or does it mean that, because I don't think that's what we mean, because they're still beholden to all the other policies, right? But it,
I was going to say, I think if you follow up and look on the next page, the superintendent or designee is authorized to establish rules and regulations. So if we're falling within the rules and regulations, then I think we'd be fully responsible. If we do something that's outside of rules and regulations, then we would be held to interpretation and would be changed by the superintendent or the designee.
I mean, currently we haven't had any issues with this part of the policy, right?
that's true.
I mean, it's one of those things where a lot of the time we change the policy when we have a reason to change the policy. But at this point, we haven't had any issues, so.
Well, does anyone know why we crossed this out?
Yeah.
I was not.
It seemed redundant, so I.
Right, I think a lot of it was the redundancy, and this is just taken from, right.
So,
That's the,
What do you think, Ken?
well, I don't think it's, Is what this was trying to say is that it's, the reason why the SJ exists, its job is to, like, you know,
Planning organization.
plan, organize, and coordinate activities and projects essential by students. That's why they're there, that's why they exist. I don't think the way this reads is, we are a completely autonomous organization, not subject to oversight by.
And we do this, right?
Yeah, and I don't think that's what that was ever intended, and I can't imagine that's how it actually works in real life. So instead of talking about responsibility or this, that, and the other, why don't you simply say, the purpose of the Student Government Association is to plan, organize, and coordinate activities and projects suggested by students.
What does the SGA charter say there? Reason for existing is? Do you have a copy?
I don't know if I have a full lot of this, is part of what we're talking about. The purpose? The purpose to provide for democratic representative school government, to give students a vote in school policy, to create and execute school and community activities, and to act in the best interest of the school community and the students of Upper Delaware at all times.
Why don't we just put that in here?
Yeah, maybe we should,
I mean,
that's Article 2 of our Constitution.
All right.
Yeah, to echo that language. seems
Put
to be
Article
sensible.
2 into Constitution.
Do you want to copy that?
Under
I don't know if you're going to read anything else, I want to read something else. But
Okay.
This is not presumably on your website, right?
Yeah, it's on, yeah, you can go on SJ, you can go on the Constitution, you can grab it.
No, right.
Okay.
I don't know what paragraph.
I'm just not sure
We're
where
the
that
title paragraph.
Appreciate it. Okay.
And I'm completely
You don't need this back.
undoing
You need
this
this back.
section, right?
What's that?
You need this back?
We just deleted.
I can get a copy.
Like, I just sent it to you right now.
I just didn't know if I was going to need to read anything more today. Good keep.
Sorry.
You got a pretty good one.
Thank you.
Right, Tom?
Okay, yeah, but you can just copy that and put it,
I got it.
that's what we're doing.
No,
Instead of that.
you're not looking at
You
it.
want to? Yeah, what paragraph are we calling this? Is it under authority, purpose, is it under guidelines for SGA?
I would just,
Keep it under guidelines.
I would say under purpose. Purpose of the organization.
The purpose is meant to be the purpose of the policy, isn't it?
Yeah.
The purpose of the policy is to establish.
Right.
So I just, if we do have guidelines of SGA.
Or
Or,
you can just simply say the charter, constitution, and bylaws, and then say administrative regulations shall contain a copy of these bylaws.
Yeah.
that works, yeah.
Approved by the superintendent of designee and.
We don't have an AR for this one.
The administrative regulation can simply be the Constitution.
So we need to create an AR.
Well, the ours can simply be.
I know, it'll be AR to create. Yeah, so we're creating. Which is this gonna be?
So what we did here is, since you already read the charter, constitution, and bylaws, rather than repeating a section of it in policy, we'll just say the charter, constitution, and bylaws shall be, duly adopted, and we'll make sure the Constitution itself is attached to the administrative regulations. Anybody that looks at the policy, scroll down, click on the administrative regulation, and then have the whole Constitution, not just that one section.
Okay.
So that covers what you do, what your authority is to do, and all that stuff.
Awesome, thanks.
All right.
I cannot find a similar document online anyway for the.
Constitution?
No, for the middle, I found that one. No, I found that one. For the middle, I'm trying to find one for the middle school. I can't find
The
it.
middle school is a lawless land.
Currently, they are completely autonomous. Number 3 is for retaliation, or retaliation against, prohibit retaliation or other disciplinary action against students for participation. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay.
Read that again?
Yeah,
Prohibit retaliation or other disciplinary action against students for participation in authorized student government association activities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a little bit better. With the imposition of school business.
Other disciplinary action, and then Ken, if you can finish this sentence again.
Or other disciplinary action against students for participation.
Just cross.
It's already there, you can just cross it
Not
after from against.
We'll get through this.
Thanks, Rob. Good brain.
I know.
Definitely right now.
For,
Now you got students' choice for.
for this, for number 3, we're editing right now, could we add against students and advisors after the disciplinary action against students and advisors? So that's in place for students and advisors of SGA.
Sure.
Students and.
Say students and staff.
Yeah.
Well, they only teach staff or,
Well,
our titles advisors, because that's.
Faculty advisors.
Yeah, faculty advisors,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
Yeah, that's worded that's in your,
Okay,
last one set up by the superintendent.
okay.
Because, well, then it should be
Students
distribution.
or.
All right, well, shouldn't this be student government activities, student government association activities authorized by, are we talking about student government association activities authorized by the student government association or authorized by the?
Well, they're doing it, so this was the conversation we had last month. This is at the high school.
Right.
That those activities are authorized according to their constitution, which was approved by the district. So in theory,
It's been approved
it,
by.
it's all been,
Oh, okay, let's talk about like the walking.
Right.
Probably what you're talking about.
yeah, well, yeah,
The student government can vote to authorize a walk. But that doesn't mean that the school can't do it. That's just, because that's not authorized by, it's not authorized by the school.
they can't, so they can vote to do that, but that would be in violation of their, because they have to do it in concert with approval
Where's
of
that?
Isn't there a concert approval of the
Well, it
superintendent?
says it later,
faculty,
guidelines,
principal.
or the building
principals.
I mean, the loophole I was talking about last time was a little bit different than this. I was talking about where they could modify their own rules without
Without
oversight,
oversight, which you didn't want.
but,
That's the same.
which is different than just authorizing activity. But, I mean, I think the general concern is the same as you're expressing, Ken.
Could it just be that, well, as long as they're following within the rules and regulations established by the superintendent?
Yeah, I mean, authorized student government association activities within the,
Right.
within the
And once they go.
confines of the
All
word.
right, authorized student government activities which are not in violation of district rules and regulations.
Under number 3, but after that. Restate that, Ken.
Yeah, it's the same, yeah. Authorized student activities, student participation in authorized student government activities, provided such activities are not in violation of school district rules and regulations.
Policy and regulations. There's rules, or policy word.
Violation of district policies, rules and regulations.
Cover.
I hear that.
Yes. Is that clear cut? What do you guys see what we did there?
All right, let's say what it is. All right, so we changed number 3 to state, prohibit retaliation or other disciplinary action against students or faculty advisors for participation in authorized student government association activities, provided such activities are not in violation of district policies, rules, and regulations.
Perfect.
Awesome.
And just, I guess one last question was, on number 3 on page, I guess it's 2.2, under to re-implement this policy which require that decisions made and actions taken by the student government organization in accordance with and within the scope of the Constitution shall not be voided or vetoed by a staff member. Like, if we pass the Constitution, maybe someone in the staff doesn't like it, but it's within the scope of our Constitution and within the rules that can't be changed, because that's the whole idea of the student government associations, that they're supposed to have some autonomy. But we have to work within, understanding we have to work within the rules and regulations of the school. So that got crossed out. I was wondering why that got crossed out. See number 3, it's right above guidelines on that.
Yeah.
Or better say, if you're concerned about, like, a staff member wanting to veto, you could keep this, but then add, with the exception of superintendent or designee.
So I think that was the intent of the one we were just working on, right? I mean, the intent of the one above that says,
Prohibit retaliation.
yeah, the prohibit retaliation statement is intended to replace this bullet number 3.
Okay.
Does it not? Does
Well,
it not
well,
cover?
retaliation can be one thing, like you could be
Well, is that,
suspended or kicked off as an SGA advisor, would be retaliation. Veto would be you pass an amendment about the way you set up the way you're going to do voting. And then someone on the staff doesn't like it, but it falls within the guidelines. That they're not
They can veto something.
well, they couldn't before, but if you take this out,
No, but they still can. It's not in your constitution that allows
Any
vetoing, and your constitution is your constitution.
wait, then can we expand this to activities or decisions? Because as of right now, it's only, unless you mean that, the entire, like, our constitution saying that, like, no one can veto.
I don't know if that's in our constitution. If decisions
Yeah.
made by the SGA cannot be vetoed by a staff member or principal, as long as you're following in accordance with the
Yeah,
rules.
so I think what you mean, participation in
Yeah.
activities sounds like it doesn't include, I mean, it could, I mean, activity of the SGA is to make decisions, but I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
We could,
What's wrong with just keeping it in there but saying, and I would make it a freestanding sentence.
Yeah, not put it in a bullet.
Okay.
Just make
I would
it brief.
say, go back,
After this?
no, keep none of it.
Go down.
scroll down a
It's
little bit.
number 3 and it's next one here. It's
Right
crossed out.
below your current screen.
Keep going down. I know, it's. This one.
Make it a
Okay.
number.
Make it a freestanding
Freestanding.
sentence, it's just, it says,
Well, now, wouldn't it be number 4?
all right, we'll make it number 4 then.
Decisions made and actions taken as to.
Go back and.
Require that decisions. No,
Yeah.
okay, go back in. If you want to just cut and paste and move it.
Or my-
I'm going to read it first.
I know, I don't know how to do that. How to delete.
Well, here,
Just copy and paste.
Oh, it's reject.
Yeah,
This-
just
no,
copy,
it's
just
copy and
copy
paste.
it. And then put it up.
Oh, there you go.
everyone on the procedure and take short of.
Superintendent's authorized to establish rules and regulations consistent.
The veto of a staff member other than superintendent or designee.
Right.
The superintendent. So these regs are
Is that
going to
where
be
I'm
more than
with
one sentence.
Building principle.
Is that better?
This is really the building,
Yeah.
superintendent, isn't it?
If
It's
it's
already
already
for superintendent.
What does it mean?
Well, usually the principal would be a designee of the
If
school.
it helps, you can do it.
That's perfect. That works. Great.
You can feel free to move closer.
Yeah, I know. We're gonna-
You go, right?
Discuss the kinds of activities are any, for example, let's go back to student. If a student walks
Not on us.
not endorsed
Nothing else?
by SGA.
Thanks
Not
so
much.
much.
Come on, Ben. Not much.
No, I'm good. I'm ready to finally fully hand over the time.
We're disappointed, we would like to.
We're done with all these.
Maybe I'll come back for a meeting
All right.
too.
Yeah, they're so much fun.
We're still live, we're still live. Are you another officer?
Yes, I am.
All right.
Community service.
Community service, that's right.
And we need that.
All right, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
We watch them. Make sure
I know, this is
Reverse
great.
everything, we just stand by you over here.
Thanks a lot.
We'll watch the films. Take care.
All right, did you guys have any, obviously Donna is here, so do we have anything for
Yes.
what we have left over in the first part for second reading adoption, 323, 203, 203.1? These are all second readings.
Yes, I do. I have 323, 455, I think they're a really minor one. Under purpose, should I dive in?
Which one you got, 323?
Yeah, all three of them, but.
All
Yeah,
three of
yeah,
them.
but
I'll make
it's
sure
the
she
same for all
stays.
three, right?
Yeah.
Under purpose, it said, where we crossed out tobacco right at the beginning there,
Mhm.
I feel like it should be a tobacco and, just like this,
Oh.
it's a tobacco and smoke-related products.
Yes.
Oh. And is that right?
Sorry.
Recognize that the use of tobacco and smoke.
323,
Right,
very beginning.
right where it says smoking,
Yeah, it's above.
just add tobacco
Should
and.
tobacco be back in there? You mean,
Yes.
it should not have been deleted?
Not, I'd leave it there, just add it.
Oh,
It
right.
doesn't matter, because the definition defines tobacco.
Yeah, but in the purpose is before that, like right where it says smoking in purpose, move right. To where it says smoking.
Yeah.
Right before that word, just say tobacco and.
I don't think you
just move the definitions to the front.
We can do that.
Tobacco, you should. Smoke-related products.
Either that or say-
This is, I just hate this methodology of pretending that smoking includes non-smoking, includes non-smoking.
Smoking related.
So we're talking about two things, we're talking about tobacco-related products and smoking-related products together. So I think we should just say that, instead of trying to have this weird definition to say, you know, A means B, when A really means A. We're saying 2 + 2 = 5 here. Why can't we just be explicit and say tobacco and smoking-related products everywhere?
I feel like it is
Like we did
said
in the title.
everywhere else in here. Right? Like in the policy itself.
Yes, and I think we
We use
should,
it as tobacco and.
exactly, it's clear and it's also consistent with the language of our policy, both in
Yeah,
the
so
title.
don't rely on this weird definition, just say it, right at the beginning, where it says smoking-related products, say tobacco and smoking-related products. There's no harm.
It's just that one incident that Mark is citing.
Yeah.
That's it. So it's.
Right,
there's
because
never-
everywhere else already has that language.
You like the end of definition.
So it's literally the purpose, right? That's what you're
That's
saying?
it, yeah, for all three of them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then I have a slightly less minor one on 203. I need to pull up. Okay, two things. So one, where it says guidelines near the top, 203.
Yeah.
That seems, the word guideline sounds weak. Like, this is really a statement of policy.
Requirements?
Yeah, it's not, I don't know if we've used that elsewhere, but it struck me here as this is more than a guideline, this is the rules.
We've gotten away from using the guidelines, we simply, at this point, we simply say,
All right.
My other
Should
one.
I take that word out?
Change to requirements, what do you
Just take out
recommend?
guidelines, yeah.
The word guidelines.
Requirements.
All right, my other one is,
203.
no, it's still in the same one. Right above where it says the superintendent shall, the last paragraph in green. Students who are not, no, go back up.
Not
Right there.
properly immunized.
Students who are not properly immunized may be excluded. Is that by us, or we're saying that the parents / guardian may authorize, it's an excused absence?
The district.
No, it's, yeah, the district may excuse.
So we may choose to exclude them for their own good.
They can't come.
They'd be excluded by
The kids.
the district
Yeah, because they're still carrying.
during an outbreak.
Okay.
They can contaminate somebody else.
Okay. Do we need to have the converse in there too that says a parent may, I mean, a parent already may, right, choose to exclude them from school? But it's not normally an authorized.
No, it's
I
not.
wasn't put that in there because somebody will use that as a reason for truancy.
Okay.
So just leave it alone.
All right, so that's fine. All right, so no, you're gonna, so change it to, the district may exclude a student from school?
Well, maybe excluded from school by the district.
No, it should be that voice. The district may exclude
Right,
students who are not. Yeah. No, even the.
Okay. We're not properly
You're
advised.
the word students.
Okay.
You're doing it. Word.
That's fine, I'll fix it later.
Well,
The district may
But
exclude.
does the rest of it read right?
No, we have to, district may include students who are not properly.
And then drop may be excluded from school.
We're not properly advised because of
The drop may be excluded from school.
Right, during an outbreak, right?
Yeah.
Right, read that, okay. Okay. Okay.
Makes sense now?
District needs to know that.
I'm sorry.
The word district.
Another item.
You should say excluded from school.
Maybe we should have from school.
Oh, yeah, from school.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
All right,
Okay.
so we're going to 239. Okay.
But just a real quick question, so 203.1, does that mean, I'm not sure this is just it needs to be separate from communicable disease, HIV, AIDS as a separate policy, or can it be rolled into 203?
Yeah, could be all right there. I don't know why it's like, I like the point.
Yeah, so
I would, yeah, I would probably.
And then you gotta figure out how you bring it back, bring it all in.
Yeah,
Why
that,
don't you do this, why don't you pass it this way? And then we'll come back and push it together.
I think Ed
Okay.
said there was a reason for that.
So we need to
We have separate,
squish them.
he
So
specifically
we-
said we shouldn't be,
Putting it together.
That's
All right,
fine.
we'll talk to him. Pass it this way, and we'll.
okay. review it.
boxes over there.
I'll pass it back, no, I know.
Really quick,
I'm
though,
just-
under prevention education on 203.1, there's an extra parentheses after HIV AIDS under the first sentence on 203.1. That's just small, but we can go forward. Go down under prevention education.
I'd like to go down.
It's a small typo. Go down, down. Right there, that parentheses.
Yeah.
Thank you. Should be forward.
Thanks, maybe I'll go back up.
I apologize, but Tom and I have another meeting at 3:30 for which we should not be late.
Anything else?
We need to talk about 239. Don's here. Don sat through 2 hours of really exciting policy.
And you can talk about, which one, 239?
239, this is foreign exchange students.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That
it's
was
like
under
one that-
review.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
please.
if you recall, Libby Hahn came to a board meeting. We had been working on this. She came to a board meeting. We brought it back to the policy committee. And then Libby came to a policy committee hearing where she actually emailed us a presentation ahead of time, spoke during community input. Donna was out of the district during that time, was unable to attend, so there's been research and such done in the interim for this policy, and it's back here. The concern is that foreign exchange students have to come in and undergo a home survey to determine whether they're in need of ELL. according to the rules, they have to undergo this home survey. And apparently, when they're answering the home survey, the definition of home is not where they're living when they're living in the district, it's actually their home. So, I strongly disagree with that, but regardless of things like that, I haven't been able to find a definition or any other district that's been using a different definition of home. That would be nice to change, but, so based on that, some of the kids come in here and aren't proficient enough, proficient to get out of ELL classes, so instead they're being put in ELL classes, which is kind of not what the whole foreign exchange program is about anyway. And what that does is it adds on kids into these ELL classes, which are fairly, intensive, teacher-intensive classes, because they're trying to teach kids that are living here, now to speak English and are going to be here permanently. So it's a matter of cost, and then also I think it's another. Right there's cost. The other concern, of course, is having any kids come in here that aren't proficient. The whole idea of the foreign exchange program is you have kids come in here that know how to speak English, get around well enough, and then are able to continue learning that. And we want to make sure we're accepting kids. I think that's subsequent thing, that we're accepting kids that are proficient. One of the concerns is that they come in here, they do the home survey, they're immediately going to the second part of it because their home does not speak English primarily, and now they have to undergo this testing for ELL, or subsequent testing, and then might actually have to get put in ELL. So the reason that this policy came up is that we've had that experience now, where we've had to put in these ELL classes, and that's something that we don't want to do. I think I got that.
If I can just
Yes,
interject, I'll say that the laws change, and it's new this year that if a student qualifies as an exchange student for ESL services, we're required as a school district to provide those services to them. So last year, that wasn't a service that we were required to provide. However, I will say, last year we did have a student that unofficially provided services because that was the level of need that they had. So this year would be the first year that students could legally qualify for those services. Of the two students we had, one qualified for services and one did not.
So, just to be clear then, so what I think I heard you say was if we accept as a foreign exchange student that qualifies for ESL, we have to service them, but didn't say anything about screening them out in the first place.
Right, we can screen them out in the first place. So that's the first thing for me is how can we do everything that we can under the policies and regulations to ensure, and we might not be able to screen them all out, but how do we make it rigorous enough? So the process at this point, most of our kids are being placed through AFS. They're coming in through AFS, they're being screened by them using their screening tool. We're not able to use the screening tool for the proficiency that we wouldn't be able to use the same tool. So it's aligning our tool with AFS's and making sure that whatever score that they're getting is very likely going to pass ours as well. So I think that's one of the things that I hope to achieve here.
If we can do that legally.
Well, yeah, I think we can. There's no requirement. When we can set, so the screening tool is a matter of points that AFS has and says to what level they are proficient in English. And so what Libby had said is that she tries to send kids that hit the 250 mark. Now, we've looked through some of the reports and not all the kids that have hit the 250 mark, and that has been a concern. Now, there's also, we don't administer this proficiency, so, who knows, so could they cheat and get a 275? Yeah, probably, but I guess that's where we're also making sure that if we're working with AFS, they're going to make sure that they're doing their due diligence and
If they send a bunch over the top,
that we don't use it. Right. So I guess that's one of the things is that I want to make sure we have a line in the AR that talks about us making sure that we can have a standard regarding the proficiency exam that's being used.
By an external
Right, by the third party place, like the agency or whatever it is, right? Because it might be another organization other than AFS that wants to place a kid in Upper Dublin.
Do we have an AR?
This is the, right?
Yeah, this is, the AR
This
is
is
where,
the
yeah, the AR is
The one we're looking at here on the screen is the.
new, it's most, the bulk of the policy was put into the AR.
Okay.
So I think that's the first point, and then the second is,
Okay.
we know that some of the kids might,
So that number 7 and that paragraph beneath it where it starts with the district, that doesn't suffice for what you're looking at, what you're looking for?
well, it's the proficiency part of it, right?
Yeah, and that's where
I know.
so I'm wondering if under maybe the paragraph, you could just add some language there.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right, but that all happens after they've already been.
Correct.
Already gotten here. So, right, and that's really the crux of the issue.
Correct. If I can just interject again, so I was asked to review the files and look at the documentation. In looking at the past 3 years, and I only have AFS really as my example, we don't typically accept students from other exchange programs. However, I will say we've had a number of programs reach out and also want to tap into Upper Dublin as a place students. AFS seems to have 2 qualifiers in their application. They have a test, which Mrs. Hahn and I have talked about, acronym ELTIS. I believe she called it the SLEP test, if I could call it that, where she indicates that she gives Upper Dublin the highest score, students who receive the highest score, closest to 250 as possible. So I have that, so I do have some of that data. Also in the application from AFS, there's a language proficiency test where students are scaled on a 4-point scale. In the files, some of that information was complete, some of it was not. But I think to your point is we get that application, it has this information in it or not, and we don't know who's ranking, judging, determining, scaling that information and if it's accurate or not. I can't share the names and the data with you, but I will say that this year, again, I can't actually even use 2 students because.
Right. No, but we've had kids, we know that we have kids that are at the level that they need to be for the full experience.
They're saying they're at the level that they need to be and.
Right, when they're here, we know
our
they're-
services.
Right.
So
Right.
I don't know if those tests are accurate.
Well, and so that's what I think part of it is looking at those tests and how are we able to look at the kids that we've had in the past versus the kids that we're having issues with and determine if there's a baseline score that people are meeting or if the AFS, it's too, someone hits a 250 and for one kid a 250 is great and another kid is a 250 is not proficient.
Or is there a test that you're aware of that would be a better?
That I can't tell to answer your question, and I have asked that question, and I don't have. I've asked our current ESL teacher if there are any tests out there that she's aware of, and the only one we keep falling back to is the home language survey, which the students then take after they're already placed in school board each year. And at that point, it's
Too late. What we're really trying to accomplish here is in order to avoid an unfunded mandate, we are trying to get an external third party to administer a screener that meets our standards.
Right.
And the only realistic way to do that is to work with the third parties to say, if you want to place students here, you have to use this test. And the students have to score above max.
Right.
I mean, other than that, we're just going to have this problem forever. I mean, and so I think the question is, are we willing to take that approach at the possible expense of not having exchange students? And that's the trade-off. Or we live with the fact that we have an unfunded mandate we have to fulfill.
Right.
that having exchange students is worth that cost.
Well, and I think that we haven't had, I mean, looking historically, we haven't had, it's a matter of, we don't know how many kids are gonna come under and fall under ELL, you know, that have to do with this. You know, I think that some of our kids in the past pretty clearly wouldn't have, and other kids you just don't know. So I think that's part of the problem is that we don't know.
Well, you probably have to start with the assumption that all of them will need it as
Right.
the worst case, right?
Right.
In this case, 2, because we've limited it to 2, but, you know, that's the potential cost, is the cost of ELL services for 2 additional students every year. Is that worth, is having exchange students worth that cost? And if not, if yes, then done. If not, then we have to say we're going to make an administrative effort to reach out to companies like AFS, organizations, I guess I should say, like AFS, and work with them. And if they won't work with us, then we're going to say no. Those are, I see no other real choices. I mean, we either accept the unwritten mandate or we try to work around it. Or we just don't even try to work around it and just say no. I guess that's an option too, although
Right.
I would
I
take
mean,
that
that's,
one.
right. I mean, like, I think that there's value for exchange students. So
Yeah.
I think that's good. I think that, I mean, I think some of it comes with I think a lot of what's happened is that AFS sends us a packet of kids and we just accept it, you know, and I think that's part of like, there has to be more of an administrative role in making a decision of who we want to accept and who we don't. And so giving our administration some guidelines on when do they say no, you know, is a good thing. I mean, on the one hand, it's like I said,
Well, why not just simply say, as it is the amount of administrative resources, they're going to consume? What would be your reason for saying, well, we don't want kids who are going to spend extra money with ELL, but we'll take kids who have, for example, disciplinary issues, or kids, what is it that you're trying to avoid here? You're trying to avoid excessive staff burden because of some.
Well, and nominally it lessens the experience for our students and their students as well, but yeah, I think it's really about staff burden.
right, I mean, I think it's not just with the ALL classes, it's the fact that if you have a kid that really isn't proficient in going to all the different classes, there's going to be that issue too. I'm not sure, and I think we might have had that problem in the past, which is why we've had to put kids in getting more help, because even if we haven't been required to do it, they needed it. Because anytime they're in a class, and for every class that you have a teacher now that has, 27 kids plus one that needs a lot more attention and time. So, I mean, I think the best way to do it is my personal opinion is to try to make our standards higher, figure out what our standards need to be, to try to make sure that we're bringing kids in that don't need extra services. And understand at the end of the day, we might have to give them extra services, they might fall through the cracks or whatever it is, but it's putting more of a burden essentially on our administration to make sure that we're only accepting the kids that we think are really going to do well here and coming up with the standards to do that.
Sort of antithetical to the public education model, but yeah.
All of it is.
I know. I don't know. I mean,
Don't give us your poor, your.
I mean, it's hard because it's like, it means kids visiting, it's getting a good experience, hopefully. And I do think that if you're here and you can't actually understand what's going on in class, you're probably not going to get that much out of it as if you had taken another year of language in your home country and come here and now actually understood things more and been able to get out of it or get more out of it. It doesn't seem like there's a lack of kids that want to come over.
What's the administration recommending?
Okay.
As a high school leadership team,
Yeah.
I would say what's been shared in that draft.
It's like, especially 7.
Yes, I think if we could find some type of universal screener that worked whether the student came from this exchange program or that exchange program. I think we could find a universal screener that the student qualified
And it would have to be administered to a student while
prior
they're
to.
still home.
Right.
Home.
Correct. And to AFS credit, I think that they try to do that
Right.
with the application that they use.
But, yeah.
But, you know, as Sarah mentioned, I'm not sure who's on the other end scoring that. And clearly, it's not working. And I think trying to keep fair to those students who need services and to the students who are already in those classrooms, we need to think about students who, whether it's academics or discipline, who are the most appropriate students for our classrooms. I'll also say that I was asked to look at some research and find out who else, what other local school districts do, and the only other school district that I could find that actually had a written policy was Abington, which essentially came down to school board making decisions. I can't say it was, that's all I'll say. And other districts don't have policies. Some indicated that they will no longer accept students. Some indicate that they accept 1 or 2 students a year. Some school districts indicate that they won't take a student who has ESL. I don't know how they determine that or not.
Right, that's all this.
They can't,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
And I mean, one of the big changes that we're looking at with this policy too is limiting the kid to being 2 kids. I mean, currently, generally, that's what we limit you. We don't have that within the policy itself. We've had an occasion where we've had more than 2 kids recently. If you look historically, we typically limit it to 2 kids.
Of anyone else that I've spoken to that will allow exchange students, it's 1 to 2 students a year. For what it's worth.
I think to Mark's question, I mean, do we see the value of foreign exchange students to our education? I think is one question that should be pondered, but I would say that I think there is a value to it. The second part is just how then do we go about the screening process to be able to assure with fidelity that we're getting that type of English language proficiency. And so my thoughts are under number 7, if we can leave it as it is right now, and then at some point, if we can get some form of a metric that we can state, add it to the AR, so we can state that. So if this 250 on this one particular screening is the one that we want to say in terms of what we think is a comfortable number, and I'm asking Ken maybe here, could we also just add that under the AR?
You can do that, yeah.
Because
It's an easy fix.
yeah, because that seems like it would help with just
Or
giving
or
a ballpark.
that, the superintendent can just say that. Again, they can just say, this is how we're gonna score these assessments.
I think we try it this way, and then I think if we have the limit now of 2, we can always approve more. I mean, that is given it right within the policy, which is kind of fun. But, you know, if we're starting to get a bunch of applicants that we think, hey, we could take more than 2, we can always revisit that at that time too. But with the new ELL requirements, maybe 2 is where the limit that we need to have for the moment at least.
I'll say we always get more than 2.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's a matter of, do we get more than 2 that we think that these kids could really flourish here? You know what I mean? And I think that's where it's, and if that looks like, hey, we got these 3 kids that we really want, that's when the administration comes to the board and says, hey, we'll have 3 kids that we want to place, and we say, okay, I mean, we're approving it anyway, so.
Does it affect how many of our kids get to go on their own exchange programs, and how many we take? Or?
So we don't have any type of an agreement with a program. So students can go on an exchange from Upper Dublin elsewhere on their own.
Oh, okay, so,
Yeah.
so the fact that we only get 2 doesn't mean there are only 3 programs.
Correct.
Is that language from 7 right out of that in this policy?
All right, so where we are we good with this? Okay.
So can I, sorry, just clarify, where exactly do the applicants, when an agency reaches out and they have an applicant that they want to be considered, where do they go? Because we're talking
That's a dead
about,
question. Yeah.
Wherever you want to go.
Yeah, wherever, we ever, whatever, I mean, that's, I guess, a Dr. Wheeler, Dr. Yanni question of how that organization should look. And who do they apply to? Is it the curriculum department? Is it people services? Is it guidance? Is it who's going to be screening this? So they get to make that management call, so.
So under one of these bullets, we should just add that, I think is maybe what
Right.
Donna is asking for.
Right.
So under maybe one even, which is where I think it should be,
Yeah.
is just to say that applications for foreign exchanges
Shall
shall
be
be decided on by superintendent or designee.
Right. Yep.
Does that sound okay, Kim?
Sure.
Right here.
Under that first bullet point,
Oh, the bullets.
no, you're there, that's right, yeah.
So and
Maybe a new number one instead of number 1, 2.
or just.
All right, that's fine too.
Yep.
Application for foreign exchange students. No, I'm just.
Obligations for exchange.
Or to be what, submitted to?
This is what we have time limits in policy. We could go on forever.
Should be directed
The
to
song that never ends.
It
The
is.
policy that never ends.
It's so true.
follow the superintendent.
So we didn't cover, I know.
You should have a
Sounds
retreat.
good to me. All
What
right,
we did at Easter, we had a retreat.
so we didn't cover
Hours.
searches, student surveys, or uses of property. So,
One night.
Yeah, we had a night. It was a night.
all right.
It was long.
We have no other community input, it appears. We're good right now.
Saturday and Sunday.
So we will have our next meeting Monday, June 25th. Here, same time.
Monday, June 25th.
Yeah. And with that, we are adjourned.